Welcome to Encroachment Sports Talk. And for those of you who are like me, it's kind of a huge diehard sports fan, ended up with a day job that has nothing to do with sports, and is a wannabe general manager of any of the major sports. A day like today or the last few days is like being a kid in a candy store. So that's because NBA free agency is upon us, and heading up to free agency, there's all these trades being made. So we felt it would be a great opportunity to talk about the offseason so far and talk about the winners and losers and some other opinions. So we are going to get things rolling and talk about some of the winners, some of the moves that we like so far in this offseason. So Chris, what do you have?
Well, yeah, let me even start higher than that. Number one, it's been exciting the last couple of days. Some of this money being thrown around is just crazy, right? I mean, so remind me if I'm reincarnated to come back as a NBA elite level player, because the money is crazy and you don't have the injuries of football, concussions and all that kind of stuff. You get to take some days off here and there. A lot of these elite players get to get more rest than they ever have. And you don't play every day like baseball. So remind me if I get reincarnated, come back as an elite wing in the NBA.
Or if you don't have the physical ability to do that, you could always come back as one of their agents.
Well, I was going to say, the big winner is Rich Paul, Clutch Sports. That's the big winner. Unbelievable. I think he signed, I was reading something, he was just signed like $350 million worth of contract. Yeah. And of course, he gets a nice percentage of that. So he's doing quite well. But in terms of individual moves, a couple contracts came out that I thought were interesting. First is this a guy named Jeremy Grant. You know that name?
I do.
Yeah. So he signed with the Blazers, and I think he started maybe a bit of a domino effect there, because it looks like Damian wants out there now, trade, and maybe because of this. But do you remember him? So from 2000, I went back and tried to remember this guy. From 2014 to 2020, he didn't do much. He was averaged 10 points, not much at all, right? Yeah. And then last year, he just came on, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. So he got a monster deal, 5 years, 160 million, 32 million a year. That's crazy. That shows you if you do well and you're winning these days and you improve. And he always played good defense. That's the yeah. But you can be a multimillionaire overnight.
Interesting. I don't know if you heard the news this morning is that Dame Lillard, I think you just mentioned it, has asked for a trade. I wonder if the Blazers knew Lillard was going to ask for a trade, would they have spent $30 million a year, 30 million plus on a guy that probably doesn't figure into their long-term future? So
yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, I think that was the domino, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good point. The other one is familiar to you, is as a Celtics fan, and it's Kristaps Porzingis. I think you got a smoking deal on the extension, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, so he signed so you got him on a trade, obviously. He signed a 2-year extension, 60 million, 30 million. That's, good money, but it's these numbers we're about to talk about are just, astronomical. The fact that you got him for 2 years, 60 million. Remember, this guy was injured, disgruntled, not very effective for a good part of his early career, especially with the Knicks. But last year, he was dominant. 23 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and his defense, he can play defense all of a sudden. Who knew? So I think that's a great move for the Celtics. And
yeah, you stole some of my thunder. I was going to mention that is a really strong move on paper. Because the trade was basically Smart, Gallinari, and Muscala. Gallinari coming off his second ACL injury, and Muscala being a throw-in. But those for basically for Porzingis, the Warriors' first-round pick next year, which is only top 4 protected, and we know the Warriors are kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, depending on how healthy they are. They've had some top picks in the last 3-4 years when they do have injured years. Right. They're not getting any younger, so that could be a potentially good pick. And they also got another first-round pick that they ended up trading down and got 4 more second-round picks. So yeah, really, and then as you mentioned, in retro, to be able to ink him, to extend him, they now have him for 3 more years, but they extended him for 2 years at 60 million, compared to some of the bad moves that we'll go into later, some of the huge dollars that have been thrown around, that's an absolute steal.
It was a steal. I mean, and if he ever plays up to his absolute, which he's getting close to his potential, I mean, he's going to make that Celtics team. That's scary what that Celtics team is becoming. And I don't want to jinx you, but geez,
yeah, the obvious risk is that it never plays more than like 55 games a year. So there's obvious health risks. So
yeah, there's injury, but there's injury with so many of these guys these days.
Yeah. In addition, I think that deal, I really hate it when people at the end of a trade, people talk about who won the trade. Like the objective is not to win the trade. It's a kind of a win-win generally, where both teams are trying to improve themselves because they get an asset that helps them more than what they're giving up. That's the objective of the trade. So talking about who wins the trade always upsets me. But I believe that the Grizzlies getting Marcus Smart for Tyus Jones, in terms of the leadership and toughness that adds to a team that already has the talent, that could be I think they're a win or two of the offseason. And then the obvious one, although I don't necessarily like the fit, but Bradley Beal for a bag of balls is basically a huge deal for the Suns. I mean,
what kind of balls? Soccer balls?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, they gave up Chris Paul, but that guy's done. Chris Paul and Landry Shamet and some of their picks, which aren't going to be top picks.
I know. The Warriors are trying to recast that trade. It's like, oh, we want Chris Paul to kind of take control of that second unit. Come on now. He's done. Did you watch him in the playoffs? He's done.
Yeah, that's I think as we talk about losers, I was going to mention, I don't go into that, but I think you're totally onto something. It's a good segue into, some of the bad moves. That was clearly a move because they are so far over the salary cap. It's not even funny. And they had to get out of Jordan Poole's contract. It was a dump of Jordan Poole's contract, which, for those of you not familiar with the new NBA collective bargaining that kicks in, not this upcoming year, but the following year, if you are over that second tax apron or whatever, second level, not only do you have to pay huge, I think more stiff taxes, but you basically cannot add players to your team. You can't use any of the mid-level exception type things. So it really, really hamstrings you. So that's what they were doing. But really good point on that. What other moves do you think were kind of questionable?
Oh, so yeah, and these are all, like you said, I don't like the idea of losing or winning trades, because remember, it's not even about players all the time, right? Sometimes people are trying to get out of cap hell. Some people, so you don't know what goals. It's apples to oranges when you're a lot of times when you're talking. But some of the what I call questionable moves are Dallas re-signing Kyrie. This dude, 3 years, 126 million, and if you can't do the math, I'll do it for you. 42 million a year for a guy who, if he thinks the earth is flat, which he does, and he wants to play, I'm not sure he wants to play half the time. I'm not sure he's interested half the time. He's played 20 games, 54 games, 29 games, and 64 games or 62 games. That's over the last 4 years, and he's 31 years old.
Yeah. Part of that was, if you remember, the COVID suspension. He couldn't play home games in Brooklyn. So he was healthy and wanting to play, but he wouldn't get vaccinated. So, but the other thing is, they were bidding against themselves. Like, who was going to bid them up for up to 40 million for Kyrie, has proven that he's not interested in winning. He's interested in just causing a locker room.
He loves drama.
Yeah, he wants drama. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I have for question moves are these drama guys who are being paid big money. My second one, and people may disagree with this one, but this guy has always been a thorn in my side, Draymond Green. So come on, 4 years, 100 million. So that's easy math for everyone. That's 25 million a year. And he's 33 years old. 8.7 rebounds, 7 assists. So his stats are good, across the board. And he's obviously a great defensive player when he puts his mind to it. But talk about drama. I mean, if you watch the playoffs, he'll either bring you positive drama or negative drama. And too often it's negative drama, and that's counterproductive. I would have let him go. And ruin some other team.
The Warriors are at a crossroads. They're, your typical aging team that, do you keep the band together and try to get one more one or one more run out of him, maybe have an off chance at getting a title, or do you see reality being on the wall and make some moves? I'm always bringing up Celtic examples, but go back to why are the Celtics where they are today? It's because Danny Ainge traded Pierce and Garnett when they were past their prime to the Brooklyn Nets for a treasured trove of draft picks. So
yeah, I mean that was a Herschel Walker type trade.
Yeah, so the Warriors could have done the same kind of thing. They maybe build around Poole,
right.
Trade Clay, let Draymond walk, or sign and trade, something like that. Move in that direction. But I don't think they're ready. I think they owe it sort of to the fans to keep that core together, especially because Curry is so special.
Yeah.
So it's that 25 million a year isn't going to completely burn them. It's a questionable move, and it's not going to age well, but it's not going to be as bad as like 40 million a year.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, not the money itself. I just thought after I saw this team perform, and obviously there was great tension with him and Jordan Poole because of the punch and so forth. So they got rid of Poole, and so they thought they'd keep him, right? So, but I just thought he brought so much kind of negative energy to them during the playoffs here, and I just don't know. He's just too much of a drama guy for me. I think you wipe that slate clean, you rebuild. This is a time to rebuild, and you let him go ruin some other team.
So he cold cocks a guy in practice, and the net result is he gets that guy shipped out, and he gets rewarded with $100 million. So
yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, no, it gets even better than that. I mean, and then he's like the walking technical foul. I mean, the dude I've never seen. I mean, he teasing anyway. He's some people love him because of his passion. I get that, but he can't shoot the ball at all. I mean, you saw him. Yeah, they let him stand on the 3-point line all day long. It's ludicrous in this day and age. So anyway,
so I have a theme for a lot of what I think are bad moves, and let me ask you: you're familiar with this? What is the first rule of investing?
Don't lose your principal.
Right. Okay. Maybe that's the second rule. Buy low, sell high, right? Okay, it's kind of like when you're making trades, when you're making financial moves, which is what free agency is all about. It's buy low and sell high. Yeah. What is the other message? Why? I mean, this is anyway. I'm not going to ask you this. You're not going to pull this out of thin air. But basically, the saying: "Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it." Right?
That's true. And I'm a big history guy. You know that.
Okay, so you're a history guy, and you're a history of the NFL guy.
Yep.
Do we remember Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys cornerback Larry Brown when he signed this at the time very lucrative contract with the LA Raiders because he came off the Super Bowl where he had a couple picks or something?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Okay.
Raiders
not quarterback.
Cornerback.
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
Raiders signed him to a 2-year. At the time, it was very lucrative. I think it was like worth 12 million or something. They signed him to a longer contract than that. But anyway, they released him after 2 years and only 12 played games because he wasn't all that. He just had a good game in the Super Bowl. So we also remember Marquise Daniels, who had a great run in the finals for the Dallas Mavs when they won their title, and he was a backup player and he got rewarded, and the rest is history. So don't make that mistake. Don't just watch the finals and get enamored with these guys who are on a hot streak. So 3 teams made that mistake. One being the Indiana Pacers. They gave Bruce Brown, the Nuggets, backup guard, combo guard, 2 years, $45 million. The guy's never averaged more than 11 points a game. It's a lot of money to be betting that because this guy looked pretty good in the finals, that he's going to continue that and is a piece to invest.
He's a second team guy. I mean, and you don't pay that kind of money for a second team guy. I mean, that's just kind of a rule.
And also don't forget, when you're a second team guy, for the most time you're playing other teams' second team defenders, and then so it's a
you look a little better, right? Yeah.
Okay, case in point number 2. This is even worse. Max Strus.
Oh yeah.
Undrafted, limited, wing with not much athleticism and not much defensive ability, who fits into a system with the Miami Heat where they're totally coached up, and you have guys like Caleb Martin playing, outplaying Jason Tatum. But
he disappeared. he disappeared in that next.
Yeah, that's just exactly my luck. But Max Strus, 4 years, $63 million with the Cavs.
I know, I saw that.
Not. And then similar on a slightly smaller note is Gabe Vincent, 3 years, $33 million to the Lakers.
That was the one that I thought was okay. Actually, I think he's got a little potential there, and I think he went to the Lakers or something. They need help. So what is that? That's $11 million. I'm okay with that one. But
yeah, but the Lakers had a lot of cap space, and I haven't looked to see who they could have got. But that takes me to actually my second point.
Yeah.
My issue is 11 million is too much for him. He is not worth $11 million. That's my issue. He's a nice player. He'll help their team, as a backup guard, but he's not worth the 11 million. And what can you do with that extra money? My second lesson is have patience. Anybody who's been in an auction fantasy draft knows how the money goes. The big money is spent early on the marquee guys.
Yeah.
And then you get some huge bargains if you simply have patience.
Yeah, good point. That's a really good point. Because I thought this was like an onslaught. This was no free agency I ever saw in the NBA. I mean, the money was just flowing.
It's always that way on day one. Don't be the first to jump out the gate unless you're landing. There is no marquee free agent this year, really, because Kyrie has, is damaged goods, kind of, mentally damaged. But don't come out the gate, and overpay for a backup player. Wait, be patient. There'll be guys out there that you can get on.
That's a really good point.
I remember a few years ago, the Celtics got Dennis Schroeder for $5 million a year.
Yeah. Yep.
And Schroeder just went for 13 million, and he's like, his reputation is way worse now than it was 2 years ago. Be patient. There'll be guys out there, So
that ties back to your investment analogy, by the way. That's one of the things you have to do if you really believe in a position.
Buy low. The money you spend matters.
Yeah.
Money even if you have it, it might, be helpful to use, to package, to have, it's better to have more money and be patient with these guys. The other one, I just have to laugh about this. It's not like a huge deal or a huge mistake, but George, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. George's Niang signed for 3 years, 26 million with the Cavs. And I'm joking with my son. What's funny about this, I'm like, who is this guy? And he said, yeah, he played on the Sixers. I'm like, we just played him a 7-game series and I don't even remember the guy. I mean,
but you know how innocuous he is to me? And I don't follow the NBA as much as you, but he was at Iowa State was the last time I remember him being any good, right?
It's funny. And I do follow the NBA and I'm like, who is this guy? Anyway, I just find that funny.
Yeah,
what are some surprises that you like, just things that have surprised you?
So just some surprising things. I thought the amount of money spent was just crazy. You said that it's like this every year. I mean, I don't remember it being this much, but maybe it's inflation and just the budgets are higher or something. But there's just some crazy contracts out there, like Fred VanVleet. He got paid, and he went to the Rockets, who are still in a heavy rebuild. So I thought that was a little surprising.
Yeah, he is as you mentioned, he's a Rich Paul client, which Rich is a very good name for that guy after the game.
Well, he must be a hell of a negotiator because he's, Fred VanVleet. If you remember that name with the Raptors, he had a great last year, but he was kind of a sixth man for a long time. So anyway, and then the other one that just is head scratching. I think there's obviously more to happen here. Is Harden's opt-in at 35.6 million.
I'm sorry, who?
Harden, James Harden opted in.
Oh yeah. There's some trade coming down, whatever that.
There's got to be a trade coming down because if there's no trade coming down, he hamstruck the 76ers. Did you see that? They couldn't do anything during this period of time.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always find it interesting when a guy opts in like that. Because James Harden is on the tail end of his career, and we don't know which year he's going to turn into a pumpkin.
Right.
So by getting 35 million in 1 year, he may turn into a pumpkin this season, and his warts will show. And then maybe after this, he's only worth 8 million a year.
Yeah, no, I thought he did the right thing personally, but what it showed me that he's not really interested in championships. And I've always kind of felt that way about James Harden. he shows up. He's another one of these guys who plays sometimes and doesn't play other times. He's not real consistent, and he's about the money, in my opinion. So he opted in. So
I think a little differently about it. I think like the fact that he opted in is not a good financial move. Look at what Kyrie got. Harden could have got at least 100 million this offseason, right?
yeah,
And so that's locking in a guaranteed 100 million.
but I think he forced their hand by saying, "Hey, look, you're gonna trade me now."
Yeah, and you know, but maybe that's again, that is, to me, it's an opposite of a financial move. He wants to get to a better team or a team that fits
Like
better.
the 76ers, come on.
That's true. Maybe he sees the fit doesn't work with them, but yeah. So another one that just came out this morning that really surprised me was Desmond Bain, 5-year, $207 million.
I almost brought that up. Then I looked at his numbers and I'm like, he actually had one hell of a season, but that's a big contract.
Yeah, you know what bothers me about him is he was the Celtics' third first-round pick. The year they took Peyton Pritchard and Grant Williams ahead of him, they took him and didn't want to pay a third first-round pick, you know, because that limits the kind of moves you can make. So they traded him for, you know, nothing, another bag of balls to Memphis, and he turned out to be the best of the bunch.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's
a big contract though.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers are good, but yeah, is he worth 43 million? I mean, Jaylen Brown's about to sign a $60 million contract, so but he hasn't, so we can't talk about that yet. The other move that is surprising and very hard to quantify, we already talked about it in terms of being a winning move for the Celtics, but trading Marcus Smart, you know, he's their heart and soul. On paper, it's a great move because they already had Brogdon and Derek White, but he's been their heart and soul, their leader, their defensive, you know, captain, and the guy with the fiery attitude who won't back down to anybody. So how do you quantify, you know, he also is very boneheaded. He'll make 2 or 3 boneheaded plays a game, bad turnovers. You know, he'll foul. I remember one game where he fouled with 32 seconds to go on the clock when they were down 1, like an intentional foul. Like, what is that? You know, just sometimes makes boneheaded moves, but then he'll have these amazing steals at the end just when it matters. He's kind of clutch. Right. How do you quantify that? You know, it's surprising.
Well, he was the ultimate glue guy, chemistry guy for you guys. And that's why I knew that, you know, what you're talking about are some of those kind of intangibles. Yeah. And so I knew that you'd be very torn about it because that move obviously was tied into the Porzingis acquisition. So we'll see how that one turns out, but I can see why you'd be a little conflicted there.
Yeah, it's just surprising, you know what I mean? It's like he is the Boston Celtics. Like he'd be the, you know, there's not many players who start and finish a career with one team. You would have thought he might have been one of those guys, but I kind of think that Brad Stevens had the luxury of coaching him for, I think, 7 years and being the GM. So he knows exactly what Smart brings to the table and the good, the bad, and what they'll be missing and can they replace it. So you got to kind of trust that. Yes. And then there's one big rumor that isn't really a rumor anymore, but the thing that I think we're all looking forward to going forward is where does Damian Lillard end up? You know, just asked for a trade, which is interesting.
What have you heard in terms of his possible destination?
I've heard Miami, Philadelphia, and the Clippers. What's kind of strange is, especially waiting so long into the off season to request that trade, he doesn't have a no trade deal, by the way. So he can't, you know, where he wants to go doesn't matter. You know, who does the Miami Heat have to give up? Nothing other than Tyler Hero. But you think the Portland Trailblazers need Tyler Hero when they have Shaden Sharp and Anthony Simmons and they just drafted Scoot Henderson? You know, where does Tyler Hero fit into that? He's also on a $25 million deal. Like, I just don't see that, you know, plus their picks. I mean, yeah, maybe if they bought him out, but any team can give you picks. You know, I'm thinking that James Harden is somehow worked into a 3-way deal.
Yeah.
If Harden goes to maybe the Clippers, you know, the Blazers end up with a bunch of picks, and Dame goes to Philadelphia.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right. So Philadelphia.
Yeah, that would be a good spot for him, Frank.
And then maybe Tyrese Maxey is the
Yeah.
you get like Tyrese Maxey and maybe Terrence Mann. They're all the similar players, that the Blazers are already strong at. But also the Blazers could probably unload just off Nurkic, which is kind of a contract that doesn't fit into their future.
Yep.
And they would probably just acquire assets and then just be players going forward. I mean, I kind of like the Blazers core with given that they just got Scoot. I think Shaden Sharp is a nice asset. Anthony Simmons is a nice player. Just starting with that plus whatever you can get back and start to build, you can somehow get your big guy. Maybe they could go after DeAndre.
And I just told you that that Grant deal was big for them too. So
yeah, I mean, fortunately for them, if they're dumping Dame, they have plenty of money to go around, right? Like having spent that money, maybe he's their leader going forward. It's not going to hamstring them towards what they're trying to build, which is probably more of a 3 to 5 year horizon for that team. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, the team that you brought up that I scratch my head all the time is the freaking Clippers. So George and Leonard play 20 games apiece. It seems. I mean, it's just so you bring a third superstar, Harden, over there because you want to do this whole. You need 3 superstars.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with the Clippers, but if I was their owner, I'd be doing some serious maneuvering right now because those guys are not, for some reason, are either motivated or into. I don't know what's going on, but it's clear to me that they should be a lot better than they are. So.
Yeah, I think it's time for a tear down if I were the Clippers. But you make one more move, you try to make it work, you get your fans excited for the offseason and then tear it down. But yeah, I think
how do you force guys to play?
Yeah. I read something that Kawhi says he's ready to play 82 games this year. I don't know where he gets that from.
He's never done it in his freaking life. I don't know where he's going to all of a sudden, when he's older, start doing it. So, I mean, I think Kawhi is a special talent when he's motivated and healthy, but Jesus Christ. I mean, that's part of the thing with this basketball player. Why I want to come back as a basketball player. You get a $40-50 million a year contract, and then you get to find a team. And sometimes if you're not interested in playing, you're like, I don't feel great today. I broke my fingernail today. I'm not feeling that well.
You get to work on your golf game, so that's another bad thing.
I mean, it's quite the gig if you can get it. Is all I can say.
All right, Chris. Awesome. Fun time.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you. Sounds good.